June 15, 1961. 11:56 a.m. Red Hook, Brooklyn. A warehouse door splintered under a single kick, wood exploding inward like it had been waiting for the hit. 3 men inside froze mid-breath. One of them lifted a pistol too late. Another reached for a knife he'd never get to use. And in the doorway, framed by daylight and dust, stood Bumpy Johnson, quiet, steady, not rushing, not shouting, like the whole city had simply moved aside to let him through. In his arms, a teenage girl shook hard enough that her teeth clicked. Her wrists were raw from rope. Her eyes were wide, staring past him, as if she didn't trust the world to stay solid. Bumpy didn't look at the men on the floor. He didn't look at the guns. He looked down at his daughter and said, almost gently, "You're coming home." For hours earlier, he didn't know where she was. For hours earlier, he had only a note, an open window, and one truth Harlem had repeated for years, part fact, part street legend, but always the same message. You can steal money from Bumpy Johnson. You can even take a shot at his business. But you do not touch his family. June 15, 1961. 8:04 a.m. The sun had just cleared the rooftops of Harlem, throwing long shadows down 122nd Street. The Johnson home sat quiet between 2 apartment buildings, the kind of brownstone that looked ordinary on purpose. Inside, the air was still. Then footsteps. Myra Johnson walked into her daughter's bedroom and stopped so suddenly her hand tightened on the doorframe. The bed was made too neat. The window was cracked open. And on the pillow sat a folded piece of paper. She picked it up with 2 fingers like it might bite. Her hands trembled as she read. We have your daughter. $500,000 by midnight or she dies. Don't call the police. Don't try to find her. Just pay. No signature. No flourish. No explanation. Just a number and a threat. Myra's scream was raw and immediate, fear, rage, disbelief all at once. It echoed down the hallway and brought Bumpy Johnson up the stairs 3 at a time. He burst into the room. Saw the open window. Saw the empty bed. Saw the note in his wife's shaking hand. For 5 seconds, he said nothing. He just stared at the bed like it might start making sense if he looked hard enough. Then he took the note. Read it once. Read it again. His face changed. It wasn't panic. It wasn't confusion. It was something far more dangerous, pure, focused rage. The calm mask he wore every day, the controlled king of Harlem, cracked. And under it was the man he usually kept locked away, not the businessman, not the negotiator, not the politician's friend. A father. Who? He asked, voice low, almost too quiet. Myra couldn't speak. She pointed at the window. Bumpy crossed the room and looked down. Fire escape. Clean. No footprints. No broken paint. Whoever did this knew how to move without leaving a story behind. Professional. He checked the window latch. Not forced. He looked at the curtain. One edge had a smear of black grease, barely visible, like a mechanic's hand had brushed it. He leaned in closer and saw something else, 2 faint scratches in the sill, like metal had rested there and slid. Bumpy didn't say it out loud, but he felt it in his bones. This wasn't random. They had watched the house. Learned the routine. Picked the minute. He looked at his watch. 8:07 a.m. Midnight gave them 15 hours. But Bumpy knew better. Kidnappers who set a long deadline weren't being generous. They were buying time to move the hostage, to wipe their tracks, to make the search feel impossible. And men who kidnap for leverage almost never keep the leverage alive any longer than they have to. Which meant Ruthie had maybe 4 hours. 5 at most. Before they decided she was more trouble than she was worth. 4 hours to disappear. 4 hours to cross state lines. 4 hours before the ransom stopped being a negotiation and became a message. And if that happened, there would be no ransom. No second chance. Only a body. Bumpy turned to Myra. I'm bringing her back. His voice was steady. Not hopeful. Not angry. Certain. I promise. Myra grabbed his arm like she could hold him in place. Ellsworth. He cupped her face with both hands. Look at me. Ruthie is coming home. Then he walked out. No shouting. No chaos. Just action. Downstairs, he picked up the phone and dialed one number. Junie answered on the first ring. We're coming, Bumpy said. Small's Paradise. 10 minutes. Everyone. I don't care if they're sleeping, eating, or bleeding. Get them there. A beat. Boss, what happened? They took Ruthie. The line went silent. Then Junie's voice came back hard as steel. We'll find her. We'll bring her home. Bumpy hung up. Looked at Myra in the doorway, tears sliding down her cheeks. Terrified. But she saw something in her husband's eyes, something that calmed her more than words could. Because she knew what he was capable of. She knew the network he'd built. She knew the loyalty he commanded. Bring her back, she whispered. Whatever it takes. Whatever it costs. Bring our baby back. Bumpy kissed her forehead. I will. Then he left. By 8:17 a.m., Small's Paradise was full. Not customers. Soldiers. 31 men sat in the darkened restaurant, spread out across tables like they were already planning a war. Numbers runners. Enforcers. Policy bankers. Street captains. Men who collected for Bumpy. Men who protected for Bumpy. Men who'd kill for him without question. They weren't waiting. They were ready. Bumpy walked in without a jacket, no weapon visible. Just a man with fire behind his eyes. He held up the ransom note. Someone took my daughter. His voice was quiet. Controlled. But every man in the room felt the storm underneath. They want $500,000. They think they can threaten my family and walk away. He paused and let the silence settle. They think wrong. He scanned the room. Faces of stone. These men had families too. Kids. Wives. Mothers in apartments upstairs. What happened to Ruthie could happen to any of them. This isn't just about me, Bumpy said. This is about the code. You don't touch families. Ever. He turned to Junie. Call every informant. Every cop on our payroll. Every pair of eyes that owes us a favor. I want to know who's been asking questions about my home, my wife, my daughter. Who's been watching? To Willie, train stations. Bus depots. Airports. Bridges. If they try to move her out of the city, I want that road closed before they touch the toll. To the rest, spread out. Talk to everyone. Bartenders, doormen, street kids, cab drivers. Anyone who might have seen something between 7 o'clock and 8 a.m. A soldier raised his hand. Boss, what if it's the Italians? Bumpy didn't flinch. Then it's the Italians. But we don't guess, he continued. We prove. We find Ruthie first. Everything else comes after. The men stood. Nodded. No speeches. No promises. They moved like water, silent, fast, flooding into Harlem, Midtown, the Bronx, Brooklyn. Bumpy stayed behind. He sat alone at a table. Stared at the clock over the bar. 8:34 a.m. 30 minutes after the note. And already, the city was moving for him. This is what people outside Harlem never understood about Bumpy Johnson. They thought his power came from guns. From fear. From bodies. But Bumpy didn't rule Harlem because he was the loudest man in the room. He ruled because he had the most information.
Other bosses bought muscle. Bumpy bought eyes. And not the obvious eyes, the ones nobody noticed. The barber who heard every rumor while men stared at themselves in the mirror. The elevator operator in a midtown building who recognized shoes before faces. The school crossing guard who watched every car slow down near the curb. The shoeshine boy at the subway entrance who could tell you who'd been nervous all morning and who'd been too confident. These people weren't employees. They were relationships. Favors. Protection. Respect. That morning, within 10 minutes of the kidnapping, the first whispers reached Bumpy's men. A delivery van had parked behind the Johnson house at 7:22 a.m. white paint. Company name stenciled on the side. But the lettering looked wrong, too fresh, too clean, like it had been painted yesterday. A man in a city worker's jacket had walked into the alley with a tool bag, head down, moving like he knew the block. At 7:29 a.m., a neighbor's kid had seen two men guide a girl into the van, not screaming, not fighting, like she'd been warned to stay quiet. The kid noticed one thing: the driver's hands were black with grease. Black grease. The same smear Bumpy had seen on the curtain. At 9:02 a.m., a numbers runner named Leon came back into Small's Paradise breathing hard. "Boss, we got something." Bumpy didn't look up. "Talk." Leon swallowed. A cabbie on Lenox said he saw a girl matching Ruthie's description near 110th, two men with her. They didn't look like family. Looked like they were rushing. Where? Near the service entrance at St. Agnes School. The cabbie said one of the men had a ring big, gold, like Italian. Bumpy's eyes lifted for the first time. St. Agnes wasn't Ruthie's school. Which meant one of two things: they were moving her, or they were staging her. Bumpy leaned forward. Did the cabbie see a vehicle? Yeah. Van. White. He remembers the back door had a dent shaped like a half-moon. Bumpy nodded once. Good. Then he said something that made Junie's jaw tighten. Find the van. Junie hesitated. Boss, that's faster than finding a man, Bumpy said. A man can change clothes. A van can't hide its dent. At 9:11 a.m., Bumpy's phone rang. A voice he didn't recognize. Calm. Almost polite. Mr. Johnson, the man said. Your daughter is safe for now. Do not get creative. Do not involve police. Bring the money when we tell you. Midnight. Bumpy didn't speak. The man continued. You have a reputation for decisiveness. Today, decide to be smart. Bumpy finally answered. Tell me something. A pause. What? Who taught you to speak like that? Bumpy asked. You sound like a man repeating lines. The caller's breathing shifted. Just slightly. A tell. Bumpy smiled faintly. You didn't write that note. He heard the caller swallow. Then the line went dead. Bumpy set the receiver down slowly. The note had one detail, he said to the room, mostly to himself. Nobody thinks about it. Junie leaned in. What detail? Bumpy tapped the paper. Midnight. The men stared. Bumpy continued. If you kidnap a man's child, you don't give him all day unless you're moving her somewhere far. Or unless midnight isn't the real deadline. He looked at the clock. 9:14 a.m. Then he stood. Midnight is for show, he said. The real deadline is noon. Silence. Willie frowned. Why noon? Bumpy walked to the window of Small's Paradise and looked out at Harlem. Because by noon the city gets loud. The streets fill. People notice. A hostage becomes risk. So they either move her before then, or they end it before then. A soldier muttered, Jesus. Bumpy turned back. We don't have 15 hours. We have 3. He pointed at 2 men. Go to every body shop in Brooklyn. Every garage. Every place a white van could get repainted or hidden. Ask about a half-moon dent. He pointed at another. Get me the list of city contractors who wear those worker jackets. Check who's been buying them off the books. Then he looked at Junie. And I want one more thing. What's that, boss? Bumpy's eyes hardened. I want the driver. At 9:31 a.m., a lead hit like a match to gasoline. A barber on 8th Avenue called in. Said a white guy with a Brooklyn accent had come in early, nervous, asking for a shave. Kept checking his watch. His hands were stained with grease that wouldn't wash out. He kept saying, the barber told Junie, that he had to be at the docks before lunch or he was dead. The docks. Red Hook. Bumpy didn't run. He didn't shout. He simply grabbed his coat and said, now we move. At 10:06 a.m., Bumpy's crew fanned into Brooklyn like a closing fist. Not a convoy with sirens. Not a loud mob. Small cars. 2 men per vehicle. No patterns. Because Bumpy understood something else, kidnappers expect a man like him to come with noise. So he came with silence. At 10:23 a.m., Willie called from a payphone near Hamilton Avenue. We found a van, he said. White. Half-moon dent on the back door. Parked behind a fish market. Bumpy's voice stayed calm. Anyone with it? Yeah, Willie said. One man. Grease hands. Smoking like he's trying to burn time. Bumpy paused. Then, don't touch him yet. Willie blinked. Boss? Follow him, Bumpy said. He leads us to her. At 10:41 a.m., the driver got in the van and pulled out. Willie tailed him. The van took side streets, avoiding main roads. Passed through neighborhoods where nobody looked twice at a work vehicle. Then headed toward the water. Red Hook. The van turned onto a street lined with warehouses and closed loading docks. It slowed at a 3-story brick building with barred windows. No signage. No lights. Just a rusted chain on the front door. The driver got out. Looked around. Knocked twice, paused, knocked once more. The chain came off. The door opened. He slipped inside. Willie's voice on the phone was a whisper. Boss. I think this is it. Bumpy didn't celebrate. He didn't exhale. He asked one question. How many exits? Willie scanned. Front door. Back loading bay. One side window on the second floor. Could be a fire escape in the rear. Bumpy's eyes narrowed. Good. Then he said the words that made every man around him feel cold. We go in quiet. We get Ruthie out alive. Then we make sure nobody tries this again. At 11:18 a.m., 10 men met Bumpy 2 blocks away from the warehouse. They didn't talk. They checked weapons. They checked each other. Bumpy looked at them. No hero moves. No noise. We don't rush the door unless we have to. Junie nodded. And if they hurt her? Bumpy stared at him. Then they die slow. At 11:31 a.m., they moved. Willie took the roof with 2 men, crawling up a rusted ladder that groaned under their weight. Junie covered the rear loading bay. Bumpy and 5 others approached the front. He put his hand on the doorknob. It was warm. Someone had just come through. He waited. Not for courage, for timing. From inside, faint voices drifted through the wood. A man laughed. He'll pay. They always pay. Another voice replied, sharper. He's not like the others. You don't understand. A third voice, nervous, said, midnight's too long. We should move her before the streets fill. Bumpy's eyes locked onto Junie. He mouthed one word, now. The door splintered under his kick. Inside, dust erupted into light. Men turned. One reached for a gun. Bumpy's crew fired first 2 controlled shots into the ceiling. Not to kill. To freeze. Hands! Junie shouted from the back as he surged in, gun up, voice like thunder. The kidnappers hesitated. That hesitation bought Bumpy 3 seconds. He crossed the room fast, eyes scanning. Stairs. He took them 2 at a time, boots hitting wood hard enough to shake the building. Second floor. A door with light beneath it. He pressed his ear to the crack. A girl's breathing. Fast. Controlled, like she was forcing herself not to sob. A man's voice, low. You keep quiet, you live. You scream, you die. Bumpy's jaw clenched. He didn't kick this door. He turned the knob slowly, easing it open like a man walking into church. Inside, Ruthie sat tied to a chair, gagged, eyes wet, hair messy, face pale. She saw him and tried to speak through the cloth. Bumpy held up one hand. I got you. A man stepped into view behind her, knife in hand, grin thin. Bumpy Johnson, he said, like he couldn't believe his luck. You came yourself. Bumpy's voice was calm. You didn't kidnap a girl. You kidnapped a city. The man laughed. Then by her back. He pressed the knife closer, enough to dimple her skin. Bumpy didn't move. He didn't blink. He said, softly, you're holding that knife like a man who's never been held accountable. The kidnapper's smile twitched. Bumpy continued. You want money. You want leverage. But you made one mistake. And what's that? You touched my family, Bumpy said. And family isn't leverage. Family is the line. The man's eyes flicked toward the window, toward the street, toward the idea of escape. That was all Bumpy needed to see. He was thinking about running. Which meant he was already losing. A gunshot cracked from downstairs, one of the kidnappers trying to force an exit. Then another sound, Willie's voice from above, calm as ice. Roofs closed. The man behind Ruthie swallowed. Bumpy stepped forward 1 pace. Stay back, the kidnapper snapped, knife shaking now. 1 more step in. Bumpy moved. Not fast. Precise. He drew his pistol and fired once. The bullet hit the man's right forearm, the arm holding the knife. The knife dropped. The man screamed. Bumpy was on him in a blink, grabbing the wrist, twisting until bone popped and the gun fell from the man's waistband. Junie rushed in behind him, already cutting Ruthie's ropes, pulling the gag off. Ruthie's first sound wasn't a scream. It was a breath huge, shaky, like she'd been drowning and finally broke the surface. Daddy, she whispered. Bumpy's eyes softened for a fraction of a second. You're okay. You're safe. Downstairs, chaos flared, 2 more kidnappers tried to push out the back. Junie's men stopped them. When it was over, the warehouse was quiet except for the wheezing breaths of men who knew the world had ended. Bumpy carried Ruthie down the stairs. He didn't let her feet touch the floor. At the front door, the driver with the grease hands sat on his knees, crying. I didn't know, he begged. I didn't know it was his daughter. They just said. Bumpy looked at him. The driver flinched like he expected a bullet. But Bumpy didn't shoot. He leaned down and spoke softly enough that only the driver could hear. Go back to whoever hired you, Bumpy said. Tell them you watched me walk out with my daughter. Tell them you watched your friends die. And tell them if they ever send you to Harlem again. I won't be this patient. The driver nodded wildly, tears dripping off his chin. Bumpy stood and walked out into daylight. 11:56 a.m. He held Ruthie close. You're coming home, he said. 4 hours. From a note on a pillow to a daughter in his arms. At 12:18 p.m., the Johnson home on 122nd Street filled with crying, shaking, relief. Myra ran out and grabbed Ruthie like she'd never let go. Ruthie clung to her mother and sobbed into her shoulder, the sound breaking every man in the room in a way bullets never could. Bumpy watched them for a long moment. Then he turned and walked into the kitchen, alone. He washed his hands at the sink. Slow. Thorough. Like he was trying to rinse the day off his skin. Junie stepped in behind him. "Boss, what now?" Bumpy didn't look up. "Now we make sure this never happens again." "Who was behind it?" Bumpy dried his hands. "An Italian crew," he said. "Not bosses. Not the commission. Small men trying to act big because someone whispered they could." Junie frowned. "So we go to war?" Bumpy finally turned. "No," he said. "War is what they expect. War makes heroes out of fools." He stepped closer, ice hard. "We do something better." That afternoon, Bumpy didn't parade through Harlem with blood on his shirt. He didn't brag. He didn't make speeches. He made calls. To the unions at the docks. To the men who controlled trucks. To the landlords who controlled doors. To the police captain who liked his envelope on Fridays. By sunset, every crew in Brooklyn that did site work for Italian outfits got the message, passed mouth to mouth like a virus. Bumpy Johnson's family is off limits. Not because it's polite. Because touching them is suicide. And then Bumpy did something nobody expected. He took the ransom note, folded it, and tucked it into an envelope. Myra found him later sitting beside Ruthie's bed. His daughter slept in short, frightened bursts, waking every few minutes like she still expected someone to pull her back into the dark. Myra sat beside him. "You got her back," she whispered, voice shaking. "How?" Bumpy stared at his daughter's face. "I didn't find her," he said. "Harlem did." Myra looked at him, confused. Bumpy explained it simply. "All those years I spent helping people, paying rent, making calls, protecting blocks, today, they paid me back with eyes. With time. With truth." Myra's tears spilled again. "Thank God." Bumpy nodded once. "Yeah," he said. "Thank God." Then he leaned down, kissed Ruthie's forehead, and whispered something only she could hear when she woke. "No one gets to take you from me. Not for money. Not for power. Not for a message." The next week, rumors spread the way they always did in New York, half true, half exaggerated, but always carrying the core lesson. People said Bumpy found his daughter in 4 hours. People said he shut down the docks. People said the kidnappers begged. People said the driver lived only to deliver the message. And the truth was, whether every detail was fact or legend didn't matter as much as what it proved. Power means nothing if it can't protect what you love. Years later, when men talked about Bumpy Johnson, they didn't just talk about numbers, or territory, or deals. They talked about the morning someone crossed the line. And how, by noon, the city learned the price of that mistake. Because the strongest man in the room isn't the one with the most guns. It's the one who can stay calm when everything is on the line. The one who can move a city with a whisper. The one who can turn fear into precision. Bumpy Johnson proved that in 4 hours. If this story hit you the way it hits Harlem, do me a favor, hit the like button. Subscribe if you want more underworld stories told like this, the ones you won't hear in a textbook. And drop a comment, if you were Bumpy, do you pay the money, or do you go hunting? Because in Harlem, respect isn't given. It's enforced.